welcome to the How Long to Beat podcast. Brain fart. Let's try again.
And
yeah, okay. That was the thing.
Go.
Hello, and welcome to the How Long to Beat podcast. I'm Rick, joined by Alex.
Hello.
And Paula.
Hello.
At the time of recording, it is Fiestas Patrias in Chile. So happy Fiestas Patrias to Paula and anyone else from Chile who's listening to us. As always, we are going to hit on the games we've beaten, played, retired. This week's topic is Enthusiast versus Collectors Gaming. We're going to have to refresh that as we go back.
It was the collector's mindset. Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll get there when we get there. And then we will continue with the latest installment of everyone's favorite podcast-based game show thing.
How Long to Beat?
Yes!
The Game! I'm just going for it now. I'm just going to start it. Now you're on my timer. Paula and I were on.
If we're on your time, Alex, why don't you lead us off with the play?
Sure. What I beat? Yeah. So I beat the week 3 of the Playdate, which, while last week I thought was very weak, this week has been a highlight week. Really excellent game. One that for me, was a 10 out of 10 because it was just a perfect. I won't obviously no spoiler or anything, but there's a kind of puzzle type game that is in this week that is really, really excellent. It is very clever, humorous, and for the type of puzzle game it constantly is introducing you new things and new concepts to it while maintaining the same similar kind of simple puzzle dynamics. In just very charming and very fun ways. And it has a bunch of modes. It feels like, I don't know. It feels like a game that is even more ambitious than being on the Playdate, which I think is why it's so lovely. It's very good. And I'm excited for you to try it out once you get there. The other game was fine. Not as strong, I don't think, but I think that's only because the core conceit was a little weaker. It's interesting. So far, the crank has been fascinating. I don't know if I've played a game that has completely sold me on the crank. That being said, it's not really a big deal because, the crank's just optional. You know what I mean? But I've yet to play a game that really made me be like, oh yeah, I definitely need it. There were some that it was fun in, but I've yet to really play something where I was just like, oh yeah, this game is better because of this. You know what I mean? Which
there's not a killer app yet, yeah.
Yeah, which to be fair, I'm also only 3 weeks in, right? There's a lot more games coming. But also, just realistically, I think it's going to take time for something to kind of appear in that sense, right? There needs to be sort of experiments with it. You're not just going to get something that fucking kicks it out of the park right away. So that being said, games that relied on a little more of a traditional kind of input, I've actually found to be the best, which I also don't think is surprising, right? Because again, it's tried and true D-pad A plus B Game Boy style stuff. It works, but yeah, I'm still loving it. I'm kind of sad that I beat Bloom because I haven't been picking it up as often, just because the thing was so awesome. But I've been really, really enjoying it, and I can't wait for next week, which starts tomorrow. So yeah, 2 more new games. I gotta say, the season thing really selling me on it because it's just each Monday I wake up and I'm like, oh, I have new games. And you're it's a lot of games, right? there's not many consoles that you buy that you get 24 excellent. Even when they're weak, it's yeah, but whatever. I have so many more. So anyway, that's me. What about Rick? You beat the one and only Return of the Obra Dinn.
Return of the Obra Dinn. I certainly did. I really, really enjoyed this game. There's definitely not necessarily a drop off, but without spoiling too much. Obviously, the conceit of the game is to work out what happened to everyone, and because of the way that's structured, you solve that in groups of 3. Alex has just spilled water all over his desk, and I can't keep it together.
All over myself. Just dropped tissue in the background.
I just saw the liquid in slow motion just go out of the bottle, and your face just dropped.
Luckily, I'm wearing quick dry shorts, so for all the exercise that I'm doing in my house right now. Which is not much.
TMI on HLTB.
Quick dry shorts are normal things.
I'm joking. It's fine. Obra Dinn's great, but because you're solving in 2s and 3s, as you get closer to solving everyone's fates, there are more situations where you can not so much brute force it, but take calculated guesses. I think that's kind of by design. I found it really interesting. In hindsight, having looked through the wiki after I completed the game, to try and work out if I've missed some obvious things with certain characters. There are some logical leaps that are less than obvious, but I think that's to the game's credit because it's almost a halfway house between linear and emergent gameplay, where there are lots of different ways to bake the cake, as it were. Like there's lots of different ways you could have worked out the people. Generally speaking, you'll find out how the story unfolds in broadly the same way, but what clues you pull from each thing and how you piece those all together, there's a lot of moving parts there. The game's excellent. The game's really, really good. Anything that I bring up that's critical is really, really splitting hairs. So the narrative setup, it's a little bit Swiss cheesy. There's definitely some elements in the back end of the narrative that are a little bit anticlimactic, just because you kind of have all the parts in your head. There's not a big reveal at the end. There are absolutely big reveals through the game, but the big sort of final act doesn't really deliver for me. But the package as a whole is exceptional. There is no game like this. There's nothing like this, and it is absolutely worth experiencing if you are interested in narrative games, if you're interested in the ways that the medium can be used to tell a different kind of tale. In short, if you're the kind of person that's listening to this podcast, it's similar to one of the games we were talking about last week. If you're here, you've probably already played this game, to be fair. I'm way behind the curve on this one, but if by some twist of fate you haven't, you really, really should. Would you say I have missed anything in that, Alex?
No, I think it's similar to Immortality, like when I talked about that one the other day, where the issue is that the non-linearity and the fact that you have to solve things on your own can mean that sometimes you solve things faster, perchance, than maybe the game expects. Although I'm not even sure that that's the case. I don't even think it's that the game doesn't expect you to figure this out. It's just that by doing so, you kind of you reveal it all. You know what I mean? And so then from there, it's like, well, okay, I know now. And so you actually start to question yourself a little bit on like, okay, so I found all of that. Is that it then? Have I like beaten the game? Oh no, wait, there's more. Which I think Return of the Obra Dinn does less of. Like I think they do a much better job than Immortality does. But
the overarching narrative is kind of less important. The devil's in the detail with Obra Dinn. I get the impression that the big story is more important to Immortality. I haven't played that, but that's the impression I get.
It is. I would agree. I would think so as well. Then again, all the clips are really good too. Anyway, they're different games, but that's just one of the. It's kind of maybe an inevitability of the genre in some ways for those kind of more open-end narrative games where it's just you honestly cannot control the way that the narrative trickles out to someone. You can in a bit, but ultimately you cede some of that control, which I think is what also makes those games so enticing in a lot of ways too, right?
Compelling, for sure, yeah.
You're like, well, it might be different than what I expect. You know, like there's like a bit of that in there. So anyway, I don't know. Food for thought.
I have to say as well, the jingle that pops up when you solve 3 of the fates, one of the best jingles in gaming.
Oh, hell yeah. Good shit.
Oh, so good. Yeah, I want to talk a lot more about the game. I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who's yet to play the game. So I'm going to park it and just say 9 out of 10. Really, really good. Paula, tell us about Railbound, which, to be fair, you have blitzed through if you've beaten it. I'm like level 5 of 8, but you've smashed it through.
Yeah, I have this thing with puzzle games that there's like paths certain point of the game, I just try to complete it just to. I don't know. It's like, oh, one more puzzle, one more puzzle, one more puzzle. Just another one. I swear this is the last one of the day. Okay, I
Oops, my
lied.
hand's
This one
slipping. I
is the
beat
actual
it.
last one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing about Railbound is the later levels of the game get like very, very hard. But in the last world of the game, world 8 or like map 8, whatever you wanted to call it,
Sure.
it's kind of like they try to mix up a little bit of everything, but at the same time, the puzzles aren't as tight as in the previous maps. So that was like a little bit of a letdown. Still, most of the puzzles in the game I found to be like very interesting and very fun to complete. There were a couple of instances that my completionist brain was like, I really cannot, for fuck's sake, figure out this puzzle. I'm gonna use a guide because it was like one of the optional puzzles, and it was like the only puzzle that I have left on map 1. And I was like, well, fuck it. I've been at this for whoever knows how long. I'm gonna use a guide for this, and it was like, I'm an idiot. That was so fucking easy. Like it was like the only thing that didn't like quite click with me, and it was like, oh yeah, that was that. I know the solution now, so I can see it. It was so easy, but it was not when you were like trying to solve it. And one thing that I really like is that you sometimes have to think a little bit outside of the box.
Mm.
And especially in the later puzzles, it seems like the devs kind of want you to go into one direction in World 8, but you can solve it in like many different ways because you're given like more rails to work with. So at that point, it's like, okay, you can do whatever. We just have these things on the map, like in case you want to use them, but there were times that I didn't use them at all. So yeah, Railbound for me was a 9 out of 10, mainly because of it falling a little bit flat near the end. But otherwise, it was a very nice and tight puzzle game with very adorable graphics. The story wasn't.
Sorry, go on. Go ahead.
Oh, you remember how in Invento the story was being told like almost after every puzzle or like every couple of puzzles? In this case, it was like after each map, so there isn't much of a story like in Invento, but it was still like a little tale that was kind of cute.
Nice.
I was just going to ask Paula if you used, because I know you mentioned you went to a guide a few times, if you'd used the in-game hint system at all.
There was an in-game hint system. I was trying to look for it, and I didn't find it.
Signposted.
So it's buried in the settings, to be fair, and if it's switched off, you'll never see it. But I'm just going to double check on my version of the game exactly where you go. I think it might weirdly be under accessibility, but you can enable or disable the hint system. It gives you a little pop-up button, and you can press it, and it will suggest a couple of the tiles. And then every time you reset the map, it will let you suggest a couple more tiles until you get it, sort of thing.
That's so sad because that way I wouldn't have like had to use a guide.
Yeah,
but it is so hidden that it was like.
It's a really good hint system as well. It's really elegantly done. Yeah, it's under accessibility. It's hint system. I know because I've had to use it a few times. Like you say, there's quite a few puzzles where the dev almost leads you one way when actually solving the puzzle requires you to approach things a little bit differently. They do that mainly, as far as I've got in the first half of the game, by the placement of the fixed elements of the track that you then build around. But yeah, for anyone who's listening, one, that hint system's there. Two, the devs have promised some extra levels later this year. They said they're going to add like an additional world or worlds. So if, like Paula, you've already beat it, maybe don't uninstall it just yet.
It's kind of a shame though on the friggin' honestly, in my opinion, it's like just have your hint system on and allow it to be easily turned off than other way around. Because if you do it the other way around, you don't fucking know it's there. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
easier for me to just shut it off than to find it. Like,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
in a puzzle. I mean, in a fucking puzzle game, it's like you need to have your goddamn hint system obvious. Like, it's a puzzle game, for Christ's sake.
And I have to say, inaccessibility. Like, I see the sense of putting inaccessibility. I think in game settings make a bit more sense.
Yeah, right. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's
The main
maybe
thing is it's there.
that might be a thing to mention. Oh, excuse me. Oh my god.
Speaking of puzzle games doing things less than perfectly, why don't you tell us about your retirement, Alex, off the back of my horrific, really, really weak reaching segue. I can't buy time any longer.
Something went down my throat. Dear God, I'm dying. All right, I'm good.
I was like, I can stretch this, I can stretch this. I couldn't quite do it.
Oh, I don't know what the heck that was. I'm not even eating anything. Someone just down my throat. Ugh. It's not a bad game at all. I'm just done. It's a puzzle game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is a Rick, you and I think. I get to a certain point in a puzzle game and I go like, all right, I'm fine. I went through 50 levels and there's like another 50. And I was like, well, I mean, I did 50 levels. That's pretty good. I'm good.
I don't finish these things. They know this, right?
Yeah,
for
right.
anyone who's listening, that game is Tapeworm Disco Puzzle.
Oh, yes,
I don't
thank you.
think we mentioned it for the Playdate. That's
Tapeworm
right.
Disco Puzzle on Playdate. Yeah, it's also on NES as well and a few other. It's really good. Like I extremely yeah. It's made by a company called I think they call themselves Low Tech Games, and so they make games for like older machines, which is why it controls very well and it feels very modern despite being designed for older systems. So yeah. I like enthusiastically endorse playing this game because it's extremely well done and it's also very good on Playdate. It looks beautiful, but it's a puzzle game. I don't tend to finish these. And that's really all there is to it. So why don't we jump then into playing? Because that's kind of all we've got for retirements, I think. Do you want to take it?
I was thinking, I love how you do retire puzzle games, and I have to almost what's the word for it?
Hold yourself back.
By impulse, I need to finish them because otherwise it will just drive me crazy.
Yeah.
I did think as you were talking about your experience with Railbound, that is a contrast.
Yeah, I just couldn't. I just, when it comes to puzzle games, the only ones that I'll really go all in on are like Picross games. Like I'll make sure to finish those. But I just couldn't give a shit when it comes to most puzzle games. Because like, and this is bad. I just get to a point where a puzzle game becomes confusing for me, and like the challenge becomes so difficult to the point where I'm like, I could sit here and figure it out because I know eventually I would figure it out. Or I could just stop. And most of the time, I just stop.
Had I considered not doing that?
Yeah, right? I'm having a good day. I don't really want to ruin it.
Wow. And that might be a good segue into my playings because I'm kind of there a little bit with Railbound. And Railbound is undoubtedly brilliant. Like I said, I'm about the halfway point on that. But it's one of those where I can feel the puzzles getting a bit harder, getting a bit more laborious. It's not that I'm going to retire this one. I think this one I am going to finish in spite of that because the hint system's really strong and I like the whole package. But I have noticed myself slowing down how much I've played it. So it's very much just in sort of 5-minute chunks in and around work, other tasks, commutes, stuff like that I've actually been picking it up. My commutes primarily, though, have been taken up by Live Alive in the past week. I'm getting close to this one, so I am like in the home stretch of the near future chapter. I ended up finishing the distant future first, and then once I finish this one, it's whatever end game stuff there is to tie all the narratives together, and that'll be me. So I expect to finish this in the next week. I think looking back on the game, I'm probably not quite as wholeheartedly enthusiastic about it as I was at the outset. I still think the setup's great. I still love the 2D HD overhaul. The music is still brilliant throughout. I have to say, the near future stuff particularly, a lot of the themes have some jazz and some sax stuff built into it. Wonderful. Excuse me. Wonderful. And it's worth saying, like, they've completely redone the music with the oversight of the original composer. With like a full band rather than just the MIDI instruments that they could do for SNES. And there's loads. The Wild West was another standout where they'd done some really
Yeah.
good stuff with the music for that one. I just think quite a few of the stories have failed to execute for me. Like the Distant Future, I could definitely tell what they were going for. Didn't quite land for me. Edo Japan was fun if you ignored the central conceit
Yes.
of that setup. Present Day felt like it kind of lacked any teeth because it was just a series of one-off fights that kind of bled into each other, but not in a way that really was compelling. It was coherent, but it wasn't compelling. I think the end game for this is going to make or break it for me, and I hope it's a make. Even if it falls flat at the end, I expect I'll still come away overall quite positive about the game. I've liked the vignette of it, even if they haven't all landed. But where I think in my initial experience of this game, particularly with the China campaign, which is among the strongest, I felt like this was one that people really, really needed to go out and experience. Where I sit at the moment is I think it's excellent, but predominantly a game for genre fans.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that's how that's changed me over the past week. I have to say, I found myself getting more and more into it as time's gone on. But I think that's a combination of inertia, having a bit more time than I did when I first picked up the game to sink into it, and also just being interested to see where the story goes, because there's not really been any real hint as to how the game's going to end, other than there's like recurring bad guy names, and I think that's all going to bleed into something. And Alex is nodding his head, so I think I might be onto something.
I'm not there yet, but that's what I've heard. Like I'm just at the end as well of my last chapter, which is the far future,
which would be distant for you. I think you'd already finished Near
yeah.
Future when we spoke about that one.
Yeah. Near Future redeems itself, but I really didn't like it at first.
Yeah, and actually, I didn't not like it at first, but I do think it's among the stronger of the game's narratives. Distant Future kind of sucks.
Yeah.
I liked the Captain Square minigame thing, and I liked a couple of elements of the narrative, but the narrative's kind of all it's got. It feels like one big long fetch quest.
Yes.
Masquerading as like a 2.5 hour RPG mini campaign, which not my idea of fun particularly. Distant Future kind of turns all of the strengths of this setup into weaknesses, in that there's no inventory management, there's no continuity, it's this little self-contained thing, and so nothing really matters except the story, and it's a really clunky, imperfect way of telling the story it wants to tell. And it also is worth saying that in 94, the story at the heart of that campaign might have actually been a bit more impactful. It riffs, without spoiling too much, it riffs a lot on the whole kind of alien in space, no one can hear you scream, evil corporation messing with power beyond their means sort of thing. That's kind of been done to death now, and that's not the story's fault, but that is the context in which we've experienced it, and that's...
And I mean, honestly, like this game was made based around popular films, right? Like that was the whole idea.
Yeah.
It's like take popular film genres and riff on them. So yeah, there's some that you're like, oh, okay, well, nowadays that's not actually the popular film genre, right? You're like, that's now just a classic, which is kind of what this game is at this point too. So it's sort of turned into itself in a weird way.
Yeah, and it's something we've talked about before in different contexts, is that the game is framed by the time in which it has experienced and what's happening around it. And in this situation, I think that's probably for the worse overall, albeit the quality still does shine through for me. I've waffled on a lot about that one. I'm still, quote unquote, playing A Link to the Past, but I haven't really touched it. I'm still, quote unquote, playing Automaton Lung for the 3DS. I still very much don't recommend that. I'm literally just picking away at it in 2-minute chunks. 50-50, knife edge, whether I finish or retire that one. It's purely a curio for me at this point. The last one, and one I'm actually playing lots more, is Days Gone. I'm probably around the sort of 3/4 mark on this one. It is gameplay wise not necessarily moving around too much, but the story has really progressed, and it's very much in the telling more than in the substance of it. So there's a plot thread that's dangled sort of through the first half of the narrative that has developed exactly the way I expected it would, but the execution is really strong. And I actually found myself thinking, oh my God, what the fuck? Sort of getting tied into it and caught up in the little intricacies of the narrative and things that are moving around. I have to say, I am kind of mainlining it much more than I was, partially because the game moves you to a new area. There's a story conceit that locks off a lot of side activities. There are some side activities available in the area that you're at, but I don't really have any particular interest in them. I'm interested in seeing the story out and finishing this game off, and I expect that I'll do that sooner rather than later. And I suppose this is another one where the context of when it comes out is so crucial to how the game is perceived. I know we talked about it briefly last week. This is a game that's excellent, but just a few years too late. I want to give the additional caveat, especially in this new area of the game. Performance is still not great, and it's worth remembering that one of the reasons that Days Gone didn't really get much traction when it first came out is that it launched in a pretty poor state. Doubly so for a first-party Sony title. It's the kind of thing that you would expect would be better on arrival. But the core gameplay is good. The gunplay feels like you're expecting it to feel. It does that kind of Last of Us thing where things are accurate, but there is a degree of inaccuracy baked in to give some tension and some stakes to things on anything but like the most high precision, high caliber weaponry. The running around of the map feels good. The bike gets much better as you go through and upgrade it. And that really sort of ties into you and your character developing and rebuilding. And that's a really smart sort of bake in there. The voice acting, the mocap work, a lot of incidental stuff around it is really well done. But it's kind of, a minimal go to checkpoint, do activity, come back to main hub, rinse, repeat, experience side activity, rinse, repeat. There's not much variety, and there's nothing that sets this game apart from any other open world survivally shooty thing that you've done, really. The story may be a little bit, but not to the extent that it justifies the whole package. And it's worth saying there are rumors they're going to make a show or a film out of this, which I think the story's capable of carrying that. I don't know that they'll land it, but that's a factor. If the story's what you're caring about, give it a couple of years and you've probably got a much nicer way to digest that. I am enjoying my time with it. I am definitely going to finish it. I don't know that I would recommend it to anybody who didn't download it on PS Plus or get it through the PlayStation Essential thing when they bought their PS5. I just don't think there is a real compelling reason or USP for this game. And that's a shame. But it is good. And this is kind of a classic sort of 7 or 8 situation where I'm so focused on the bits that aren't quite right or the bits that are missing. The game underneath is still good. It's the kind of thing that, someone who plays FIFA and COD and the odd thing they pick up on a whim every year would play this game and have a really, really good time. It doesn't stand up to its contemporaries, and that is knowledge that we as people who are more interested in gaming are aware of, and that's where it falls flat because it didn't do enough to attract the people who would have liked it irrespective. And there were too many problems for it to really get any kind of traction with the people who know.
Well, I mean, that's the issue. Like, at the end of the day, if you're going to make a fucking game in that is basically in one of the most popular genres with just so many fucking soulless clones out there, gotta give it something. It's just this. When I look at that game, I go there's a million games I can play just like this that are really, really good, and it's why it's tough to be oh yeah, well I'll go play this mediocre-ish one, versus which is when you're and there's nothing horrifically wrong with it, but then you're also but there's nothing incredibly right with it, right? Or you're just
correct, yeah.
Yeah.
And hell, I'm only playing it because I got it through PS Plus. My pet theory is because if you go back to sort of pre-release material, they were really hyping up the zombie hordes.
Yeah.
And there are literally 1 or 2 set pieces where the hordes are relevant, and you will occasionally see a horde on the map and have to avoid them. I really think they should have baked the hordes into it more. I think there should have been more set pieces built around them. I think they should have really leaned in hard to like set pieces working around the unconfrontable, inevitable tide of zombies. Now, I don't know if it's a technical thing, if it was a thing that was never really planned and marketing just, took an idea and ran with it beyond their remit, but...
Well, I mean, I think it's entirely possible that marketing was like, how the fuck do we market this zombie game?
Yeah,
because they're like...
fair. I think it...
Yeah.
I think if I'm putting my builder's hat on, I'm like, how do I fix this situation? More horde stuff and more specific stuff built around what the horde does to the setup would have been incredible. As far into the game as I am, I haven't really seen it, and that is a problem. I've waffled on about this game and my playings more than enough. There's not really a lot of movement on them. There will be. I think we've all got things that we're kind of close to finishing next week, but that's where I am. Paula, tell us what... Well, in fact, before you do, Paula, segue for you. I have downloaded Age of Empires 4, which I shared with you too. I have yet to boot it up, but I do need to play it because obviously Paula, as the winner of last time's How Long to Beat the Game, mandated it, and we're pretty close to having a vote on Alex's win.
Yeah, you better get playing that game.
So my time's running out. It's worth saying the Queen's getting buried tomorrow at the time of recording, and I'm not particularly bothered about watching the funeral, so I have time. Nothing else, I have time.
I have a day off tomorrow too. I guess that's what happens when you're a Commonwealth country. They're just like, they made a federal holiday for death, which, listen, I have to say is not to be like blasphemous, but I was like, they're like, it's a federal holiday, a day of mourning, and I was like, a holiday? And I was like, oh, sorry, I shouldn't say that so loud. I'm like, yeah.
And I have to say, I had the Tuesday off anyway, so it's given me like a 4-day weekend, which is excellent.
Isn't it beautiful?
Good on Liz, I say.
Yeah, there you go.
Well,
look, she was 96.
Tomorrow I have a week. Well, tomorrow I have a day off because of Fiestas Patrias, so I'm here for multiplayer if you want, Rick.
Oh, I'm not ready for that kind of multiplayer, Paula. I'm not ready to get burnt like that.
Well, we usually play
I'm not
together.
gonna play against you. We can play against the computer.
Maybe.
I learned a lot playing with her and Felipe, actually.
That segue installed or instigated. Paula, tell us about what you've been playing.
So, Age of Empires 4, surprise, surprise. I tried to go to Gold 3 this morning and it didn't go well.
Whoa.
So, I have to train a little bit more before I can get there. Still, my ABM is kind of like rusty right now because I haven't been playing as much as I was playing like a couple of weeks ago. I'm still playing a lot. Don't get me wrong. I somehow managed to win against Felipe like a couple more times, and he was like, "Okay, let's play together against other people, please." So I was like, "Yeah, fine. That's fine by me." And the thing is that previously we didn't like do anything to change our strategy going multiplayer. But now we watch Visticutus video on 2v2, and we discovered that we were doing things a little bit wrong. Like, for example, I was just like trying to stay on feudal, like trying to defend him while he tried to go all the way to imperial. And what should have really happened is that he would defend me with Chinese until castle, and then I could like pick up all the relics and like secure the economy for both of us, and then we can start like building more units and trying to defeat the opponent before the opponent defeated us. So we made those changes to our strategy, and also we tried to play more defensively because I think Chinese is a more defensive civilization, or at least HRE is a more defensive civilization early on. Unlike, for example, the English and French combo, which, for fact's sake, I fucking hate that combo. so fucking much because they will go to your town with their early knights and their longbowmans, and that can make you not have a very good time, especially if you're against both of them and your ally doesn't have like any units to defend you with or like to help you with. So we made those changes and we actually won 2 of the 3 matches. The third match dragged on forever for like an hour, and it was like so intense and it was horrible. And then we had to do like a post-mortem because we lost. And we were like, yeah, it seems we made a lot of mistakes here. So we probably shouldn't have made the match go on for so long. We should have probably like pestered them early on because we could have done that. And I don't know, there were like so many little things that went wrong. Like we didn't even do the counters right for a while. So it was like, yeah, we fucked up. Anyway, those are my Age of Empires 4 adventures. There will be many more to come. And hopefully next time I will be Gold 3. Hopefully, I promise nothing. And there's like 5 weeks left until the next season. So at the very least, I want to get to Gold 3. Hopefully.
And didn't the new DLC just release too?
No, the new DLC it has released like in a kind of like a preview for those who have the game on Steam.
Right, and the pros I think have got it and stuff, but not for everybody yet.
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah.
Not for everybody yet. And the game is gonna change so much because of the naval update. Like the water rework, everything is gonna be like totally different.
Oh yeah, because water's not getting much play these days, but yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, water is like you see water in the map and it's like, hell no, I'm only gonna catch the fishes there, but hopefully there isn't like much more water that separates the civilizations or the ones I'm fucked. So that's gonna get totally reworked. We're gonna get the Malians and the Ottomans, which are gonna change the game completely. And also, we're getting 8 new maps. 8 new maps.
Nice.
Which is a lot. And finally, we are getting the towns back. Because in Age of Empires 2, you could just type and send, for example, 1, and it would be like, yes, no. 2 was no, and I don't know, 11 was start the game already. And things like that. And those are coming back like very soon on the next big update. And the other thing that is back are cheat codes, which I'm not sure if they worked like this in previous games, but you can enable cheat codes in custom multiplayer matches, which I can only imagine is total chaos. Like, how do you even play when all the players can cheat? Or like can use cheat codes? Especially when there's a cheat code called This Is Fine. And you can set buildings on fire with it. So I can only imagine that there's gonna be a lot of spontaneous combustion going on.
I would assume that they just have modes that disable those, though, right? Like I would be surprised if they're even able to be played online, to be honest.
No, you can set them up like for only custom multiplayer matches, and you have to set them on. But by default, they are set up. But imagine how chaotic it would be for a match with multiplayer cheat codes set on.
I mean, it sounds like playing Smash Bros. With the items. Fun, but chaos.
It could be. It could be that way.
But also, cheats sound like they would
anyways,
be really fucking annoying in a RTS because like having to input them on the go. I'm like, that sounds like a whole other game in and of itself.
yeah, it's like, oh, I could be finding this cheat code, or I could be defending my base because the enemy said the cheat code first, and well, fuck me.
Exactly, man. Priorities.
Yeah. I don't know. Still, I'm really happy we're getting new stuff on Age of Empires, and we don't have to pay anything for it.
Mm-hmm.
The other two games that I'm playing, sadly, they're not free, but well, one of them could be, if you know what I mean. Pio Fury, Faded Memories for the Switch. I finished Nicola Francesca's route. I am not sure if I want to immediately jump to the other route or wait for Pio Fiore 1926 to come out, and then I could play like one route on Faded Memories and then the sequel route immediately after, which sounds like for continuity's sake, it might be better. But also, I'm not sure if I have the patience for the game to arrive before I continue playing Before, but we'll see. The other game that I'm playing is Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. I haven't gone to the Eastern Palace yet, but I've been collecting quite a lot of stuff. I have 2 magic bottles, the net for catching bees, and one full piece of heart. No, one full heart container. And what else? And something else I got. I can't remember what. But I've been collecting stuff before going to the first dungeon because one thing that I am still not quite used to on this game are the controllers, because you can't go diagonal, and that has cost me quite a bit of health already. So I'm trying to make use of stuff like the boomerang to stun enemies before they hit me, and I'm trying to I also got bombs, which was nice. And I got access to a place to replenish my bombs and arrows, but I don't have a bow and arrow yet. So I hope I get that one.
This sounds
So,
very quintessential Paula. Collecting a bunch of stuff before you get going. I just remember you telling us about playing Ocarina at a time and just like getting all the Skulltumbas before you guys went further on.
yeah, like, I don't know, for Zelda, I really like to collect a lot of stuff first before I go on.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah,
I mean,
this was
that's like,
prior to Breath of the Wild.
yeah, oh yeah.
Like I understand for Breath of the Wild that you go collecting everything in the way to whatever you're going to, but in other Zelda games, I kind of like collecting stuff as soon as it becomes available for some reason, instead of like just running into it and then collecting it and stuff like that.
Makes
Unless
sense though.
it's like
That's
modern, yeah, unless it's like more modern Zelda games, because at least until Majora's Mask, I felt like I needed that extra stuff because the controllers were kind of clunky. Except in the 3DS release, which I feel the controllers are fine. But for other games like Twilight Princess, Wind Waker, even like the DS games that I feel like, hey, I can work with these controllers and I don't feel the controllers are working against me. I can just explore it to my leisure. Which probably you guys don't agree with me saying the DS games are they control great.
Oh no, I like the DS thing. I'm from Record Spirit
Oh,
Tracks
yeah.
is my favorite Zelda that I've played.
Or are you talking about the 3DS ones or the DS one? I don't know.
The DS ones, Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks.
Yeah, they're fine, control wise.
Yeah,
I didn't love it, didn't hate it. I was like, whatever, works for the DS.
Works for DS, yeah.
Yeah, you know, like I'm like it
Um,
works. Like I'm glad they did that instead of trying to make me fucking D-pad around a 3D space. I would have lost my mind. At least in
You're
a top-down way,
oh
right?
yeah, that would have been horrible.
Are you saying you didn't enjoy playing Mario 64 with the D-pad?
Me? Yeah, I did not enjoy doing that. It was rough. That's how I first played Mario 64, and it's so funny
Yeah,
because
same.
I always thought that I was just totally shit at Mario 64 because I could never
Yeah.
do anything well. And then I finally played it again like years later on the N64, and I was like, oh, this makes sense now. Like, and then I think I played on the Wii Virtual Console as well, and that's where I was like, oh, this is clearly how this game was meant to be played.
Mm-hmm.
They did their best, but it wasn't good enough.
They tried.
They
Exactly.
tried. Damn.
Anyway, tangent over.
So yeah, that's it for me. Playing stuff. I hopefully I'll have like more stuff to talk about next week, which I promise nothing because Hamburg is gonna kill me. But Rick,
Rick already went.
Alex,
It's me.
sorry, Rick's already went.
It's me.
I was
Alex,
that
I'm
memorable,
sorry.
huh?
Yeah. I actually don't have a lot to talk about with most of these because I've only really been playing one game. Like I've touched Live Alive. I think I touched it. I played a section of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. Disco Elysium is installed on my hard drive. But also haven't touched it. I'm also waiting to go back. I'm going back to this small town that we were staying in for a month. So I'm just holding off on PC games until then because I'm like, that's when I'll be playing a fuck ton of them again. But I've just been doing console stuff. I have been playing Sketch Share Solve on my Playdate, which is just a Picross game on Playdate, and I'm almost done. And it's lovely on there. But the game that I've really been fucking pouring hours into, I'm like 40 something hours in now, is Cyberpunk 2077. Great, excellent, very fun. I've been loving it. Okay, I'm at the point where I'm at the end now, where there are some things that I'm starting to be a little like, why'd you design it this way? And it's mostly side jobs being like randomly being called for them. Because there's no like real rhyme or reason as to when individuals will start the side. Because I've pretty much done all the side jobs now. There's only one side job that I have that, because there's no more on the map. I've completed all of the like character side jobs, right? So I like have those achievements. But there's one side job that I have. And also, I'm starting to get a lot of glitches at this point. I will just have fucking side job things pop up sometimes, or like I will get a notification for a side job I have completed. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like suddenly I'll get a call after that side job's been done. And then if I load my game again, that side job's gone. And I'm like, what the hell? Like it feels a little bit like as the save file gets longer, it feels like Cyberpunk is like coming apart at its seams the more that I've played the game. To the point that I'm just kind of like, how is it still around? And how is everything okay? And like, anyway, there's just weird shit that goes on in this game sometimes, you know? Where you're like,
Cyberpunk things.
Yeah, but this is the problem though, is that the game is all about like weird glitchy stuff, and like there's some story things that will have you do stuff. And so sometimes I honestly can't tell if the game has glitched or if it's supposed to do this, which is a real problem because sometimes I'll be sitting there and I'm like, nothing's happening. Is this meant to be nothing happening, or has something glitched? And it's like,
yeah.
And then I'll reload and I go, okay, no, that was normal. Oh, Jesus Christ. And I have weird glitches. Like when I'm looking at computers, if I go into a security camera, and then if I leave the security camera feed on the computer, 75% of the time, the cursor on the computer disappears. And I'm often having to go through it. And I'm like, why does that happen? Anyway, it's just really weird little things that like, they're not a big deal. But when you play the game for like almost 50 hours, you get to a point where you start to be like, again, guys. Like, you know, you're just like, they get a little cumulative and you're like, what the fuck? And most of I'd actually say that I think most of my complaints are more complaints of like the genre than necessarily this game in particular. And I mean that a little bit in terms of like all the gigs and like the stuff that you and like the leveling system that they chose, because I'm pretty sure it's one of those like scaled leveling, right? Where like as you level, the world levels with you. Except for some people, like some things get a little easier, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I mean? Like there aren't really a lot of like overly leveled people. There's usually this kind of, it seems like there's dynamic scaling. There might be some areas where people are really strong. When I first started the game, there were definitely people that I couldn't fuck with. But now I'm a monster. Like the character I've created, I'm a sneaking, cyber hacking, shotgun, light machine gun, gorilla arms fighter. And it's extremely fun. I gotta say, the bare knuckle fighting is actually pretty fucking satisfying. Yeah, and like because I did the boxing thing at one point after I got gorilla arms, and I just decimated it because I did it pretty far in. It always said that it was very high danger, and I was like, no, it's not. I would walk in and I go like boom, boom, and it would just drop, and I was like,
without gorilla arms, it is very high danger. Yes. So I went mantis blades instead of gorilla arms. I also did the boxing quest line pretty early on. As a matter of pure stubbornness, I was like, I'm going to do this, and it took a couple of tries of essentially perfect runs, just sneaking little hits in, and like dancing around the opponent for like 3 or 4 minutes until they finally went down. So without gorilla arms, to be fair, it is a pretty dicey one, particularly the last couple of fights.
Yeah, with gorilla arms, it's a fucking breeze.
I believe that. I do believe that.
And honestly, I have like flaming gorilla arms right now, and sometimes I just like to walk in and just like beat the shit out of everyone, and you're like, I have so much health, I don't give a fuck, and you're just like beating the shit out of people, and I was like, this is pretty fun. I'm not gonna lie, this is pretty fun. And like, I will say, dismembering people with a shotgun is pretty cool. Like, I come in there and I'm just like, I remember there was one level for Judy, and there's just this 1 minute, I won't go into details of the mission, but anyway, there's just this moment where like you have to like kill a character, and they're just like, well, you won't be able to stop me, and like they pull out this like knife, and I just poof blew their head off, and I was like, nice try, bitch. You know, it's like,
that was like the whole second half of the game,
right? The power creep explodes at a certain point. Like you just become.
Oh, there's no power creep; it's a power stride. That power is proud of how OP it is.
It's like, because it's like, okay, you're like fairly strong. And it's challenging for the first like maybe 10 to 15 levels, maybe. And then all of a sudden, you are like a fucking unstoppable tank. Now, I will say, I imagine it really depends what you pour your perks into. I respect at one point because I was like, listen, all I want is breach protocol, cyber hacking, and shotguns. That's all I want. That's all the perks that I have. I don't bother with anything fucking else. I don't give a shit. And yeah, I don't fail any skill checks. I would also say, like, the only skill checks that I tend to fail are like reflex or like the cool one, but they've never mattered. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've never had a skill check for those where it was actually important to the mission. The only ones that I've had that have been important to the missions are body and intelligence. And so I maxed out intelligence, and that has so far ended up being extremely useful for like main mission stuff, because I can actually like find shortcuts into things and stuff. So I don't know, from what I've seen, and it could just be that, and I don't know, maybe this is true. Maybe Cyberpunk just sort of tailors and offers you skill checks based on what you kind of have, but I don't think that's entirely accurate.
No, it doesn't.
Exactly.
That's my knowledge, it doesn't.
So then I think intelligence and body are honestly two of the most practical and useful, because they're also extremely useful for you in combat. You know what I mean? Like, body is just extremely useful because it helps with your health, and intelligence is extremely useful because cyber hacking motherfuckers is awesome. You know?
It's broken, it's OP, yeah. It's worth saying, like, obviously those numbers will be higher if you've done all the side missions and like harvested all the extra XP, which we both did. But also that's where the best content is. So like, obviously you would do that.
The main story is really fast. Like, I spent the last like 15 or so hours just doing all this side stuff because the side jobs are fun. Even the gigs are pretty fun, I have to say. Like, they're obviously, they're not that involved, but they offer interesting mini stories within them, and like, they're very open-ended on how you can finish them. I haven't bothered playing them anymore because my street cred got maxed out pretty fast. And so I'm sort of like, well, I'm going to save the gigs because I'm assuming when the expansion comes out that it'll likely come with a level cap increase, which I do hope, because I think it's capped at 50 for street cred, and I think 50 for your level as well. Though I think getting to level 50 right now in the game would be that's pretty fucking hard. Like I'm level like
You'd have to like grind police things and extras. I think
yeah.
other than the street crime stuff, I cleared everything, and I don't think I breached level 40.
Really? Okay, because I'm at level 37 right now.
Maybe a smidge beyond 40 then, but I certainly wasn't anywhere near
sense.
fully leveling out.
Yeah, and that makes sense because like I said, I've done all the side jobs except for one that they won't message me. So I'm like, I don't fucking know. I've slept so many times in my bed and they don't fucking. Anyway, they're just like, you'll be here next week. And I was like, I have spent more than a week in this fucking game at this point since I got this damn side quest. I just hate that kind of, because the time thing doesn't really make much sense in this game either. I theorize that the time mechanic, mostly it's just so that, it's RPG stuff. It looks nice to have it cycle through, which I will admit it's true. When storms come into town, it's really cool. But I also think maybe for the reason some of the missions have specific times is so that they can kind of cheat a little bit, so that when you have to wait and then they can kind of like set up that mission. Do you know what I mean? Because like I think they have to put like a new instance of like, okay, now this mission begins, instead of just like meet this person there randomly, because then, do you know what I mean? Like it's easier to just have a ping that you click and wait and then the mission starts than it is to like have that mission in your list, and if you just walk here that person is ready, like anyway, I think there's probably some like smart designy stuff going on there, or I could be wrong and they're just like, no, we just thought that was a good way to do it, but I think
smart designing and Cyberpunk development do not go hand in hand.
But to be fair, I don't think it's the design that's the problem. I think it was mostly
I'm being clear by now.
Yeah, or the producers. Sorry. Yeah. But Keanu Reeves is great. Like I actually think the Johnny story is really fun. I've been having a very, very good time with Johnny. We've become best buds. Because how else could you do it? That fucking just anarchist little rocker boy, and all of the characters I think are really interesting. I love Pan Am's awesome.
Yes,
and
Pan Am best girl.
Yeah, Judy is also, though, Judy's my fave. Judy and I we're together, because
I take Judy's not all that.
Judy's great.
Yeah,
Judy's legit, man. Did you do Judy's mission? You go under the water. It's so awesome.
I did do Judy's mission. I still think she ain't all that.
Oh, I love Judy. Judy's my queer little just like heart place, because I played as female V.
Okay.
Yeah, which I actually really like playing as female V. And I also really appreciate that the game just like actually has, like, it's really nice because the game. So sometimes I think in these games, something that bothers me is that they'll treat sexuality a little bit like a whatever, like we're all down for whatever, which is fine. Like, I'm a little bisexual boy. I get it. Some people are down for whatevs. But in this game, like they have character who's like bisexual, but then they also have characters who are just like, no, like Carrie's just gay, in the game, or at least I think Carrie's pretty fluid. But Carrie, at least when it comes to romance, is like only interested if you're in like a male body, right? Whereas Judy is not interested in you if you're in a male body. And so I'm like, I kind of like that. Like, I think there's like, I don't know, it makes those characters feel more real. Like they make choices a little bit, instead of just kind of like, I am here for you, player, like it feels a little more like real. And I also really like the representation they gave to Claire. Like Claire is just trans, and that's just it. Like she just is. And it's like, I thought that was really nice. And just has a full storyline that doesn't revolve around that. And it's just like an interesting storyline. And I was like, this feels like
that detail is incidental in her arc, and that her arc is only incidental in like a side chain, if I remember correctly.
It's a side job.
So it's not, it's just like you said, it just is.
Yeah, and that's what I appreciate. Like, it's just lived in, right? Like, it's just like, this is this world, and everybody lives their best life however they want to live that life, in good old Night City. So I just thought that was really, I was really nice. I was like, oh, I appreciate the work that they've done within this. Yeah, it's really fun. Shotguns are fucking dope in this game. So is smart tech and everything, and that cyber hacking and all of it. It is a really fun immersive sim. It is not revolutionary at all. It does feel quite standard to the genre, but it feels like, and so this is kind of where I would compare with Days Gone, where like what you've described with Days Gone feels like middle of the road standard, whereas this feels like top of the pack standard at this point, which again, is why I'm so pissed off, and unfortunately always had to bring up that launch, that they launched it when they did, because had this game come out now, this is easily a like 9 out of 10 game. Like, only thing that's like striking it down is like just some text shit, you know?
And it's worth saying, even with all of that, like the setting is pretty novel.
Yeah, the setting is.
Even if you ignore all the little things that they do differently in terms of the gunplay, in terms of the quick hacking stuff, which it goes a fair bit beyond even, you know, the closest comparators, Watch Dogs. It goes a fair bit beyond that. There's like planning you have to spec into its whole thing. Even if you ignore all those little things, that setting is enough to separate it from other games like it, because it is such a fundamental part of the game, and it fundamentally touches all aspects of the game. And I think that's a comparison where Days Gone, zombie post-apocalypse.
Yeah, that's it, right? You're like,
oh,
been there, done that.
That doesn't narrow it down at all.
Yeah, and like Cyberpunk is such a fascinating, like the world they've created, like from Mike Ponce. Because what I think is really neat about it is that it's a world, it is a future as envisioned from the 80s. And so like that to me, I think is kind of neat, because, you know, it's this very tactile, like it's very Blade Runner, right? Like it's this tactile, like you still jack into shit, right? They don't just like do it over the cloud or whatever. They jack into stuff, and like everything, like the tech all feels very tactile, which I think is really, it's just really neat. And like I just kind of love that the whole concept is like a world where corpos run wild, right? And like you're like, yeah, okay, not that different from the world we live in at this point. It's just it comes through in a very different way, right? Where it's like, now we're controlling the net, versus their net was a very different concept, right?
And the whole central idea is that their version of the net was brought down by a hacker in the 30s.
Yeah.
And is like a corrupt place full of malware and on that point, it's worth saying the anime is A, really cool, and B, features an Arasaka Academy High School, which was very...
Oh, that anime was awesome. I finished it last night, actually. Like, speaking of Cyberpunk,
I haven't finished it, so it's got like 3
I
episodes
won't give
to
you
go.
spoilers, but fucking hell, that is a good anime. And like, it's, I mean, it's also fucked. Like, it is fucked in all the best ways. And I love it. It plays on the cyberpsychosis. And like that's like really the central theme of that, which like in the cyberpunk world, cyberpsychosis is the idea that if you chrome yourself out too much, and like, you know, mod your body with too much cyberware, it eventually drives individuals psycho. Like they literally go, and then they call cyber psycho, in the sense where it seems as though like, and it's interesting because in the game you don't like, there's a really fun sort of mission where like you go through, and I think there are 17 cyber psychos that you can take out.
Yes.
Yeah. And I liked doing those. They're fun. I think they could have been a little better. They could have. I wish that they gave you more about each of those characters through actual like conversation with your fixer than with all text. It was a lot of text, so I often skipped through a fair bit of it because it was too much. But you don't get a strong understanding of cyberpsychosis, even though you can make people go cyberpsycho. Like I have the quick hack legendary one where I can just turn. It's very fun to turn people cyberpsychos. But the show really demonstrates what that is, where like you start to like lose grip on reality entirely, and like you're seeing like multiple different times, and you go kind of nuts and just like super powerful because of like the corrupting influence of the chrome that you're wearing. And such a cool concept, like with tragic results for sure.
And it's Trigger, it's great animation, very digestible, 10 episodes, 20 minutes long each.
The animation's beautiful too. Like it's very beautiful. Obviously it's extremely mature. Like don't go watching this with your fam. There's a lot of nudity and fucking heads exploding. So like keep that in mind. Yeah.
First episode especially goes hard. The amount of people with just like,
it goes way harder too as you get along. Like the end of this fucking series goes hard. Like it is good shit. I've just been like in a little cyberpunk bubble for a little bit here, because it seems like it was the right time to get back into it, because like all the announcements of the fucking expansion coming, and then the anime and everything. I was like, I guess this was a great time to get back into cyberpunk, because it's just like it's big right now. And so I would honestly argue, like, I think the anime is better than the game. It's just as a piece of art, they're obviously very, very, very different experiences. But like in terms of demonstrating the world of cyberpunk, that show is incredible. And what's amazing is that like that show, everything you see in it is from the game. Like, they worked clearly extremely collaboratively with CD Projekt Red, because like the sounds, the locations that they visit,
UI interface stuff, even the call symbols, it's identical. And like the security cam thing in the corner.
It's all identical. The quick hacking, it's all of it is identical to the game. But in a way that feels organic. And you even see some characters that are in the game. You'll see some of them in the show.
Like the
Rogue?
the Chinatown fixer lady. You
Oh,
hear her
Wakako.
voice.
Yeah.
That's the one, yeah. And it's the same character.
Yeah. And you meet Rogue at Afterlife as well. I mean, she doesn't talk, but you see her there as well, because you go to Afterlife and stuff. So yeah, it's really cool. Like, there's just legit places that you can go to and stuff. And there's actually a really cool Easter egg, I think, in one of the places that the main character lives at one point. So like, there's some pretty cool stuff where like you're looking around and you're like, hey, wait, I own that. You're like, oh. And there is a neat thing, like you can get some stuff from the show in the game now. That's actually like pretty cool and pretty fun. And yeah. I don't know, man. It's good. I will say Cyberpunk is a bleak fucking look at at a future too, though, and a world. Like, it is a world where you live fast, die hard. Like, that's like, that's just how it goes in that world. And so yeah, I'm really digging it. I think the voice actor for female V is phenomenal. I'm sure the male one is as well, but I had fun playing as female V. And so I don't think they had this when you were playing, but this only came out, I think, in the most recent patch. But they did like an outfit patch where like you can go and you can create outfits. So every every item that you get in the game, if you sell it or dismantle it, doesn't matter. They keep a record of it. And so I had my V decked out in some sweet outfits. Like, I looked cool the whole game, and it felt great because when you're like, riding your motorcycle and shit, you could see it. I had her in this like wicked coat and stuff. It was really cool. So that is an awesome thing. And I realized, I'm like, man, feel bad if you played this way back, because like there is a lot of quality of life stuff that you don't realize. But no, I know it's fine. You had fun. But I just like at the times, like there'll be a few moments where like you'll receive an item and then suddenly it takes your outfit off, and I'll like open my menu and I'm like, oh my god, because like V just looks horrible with like all this weird fucking armor and shit. And you're like, like it's just disgusting. I'm like, turn my outfit back on. And I'm like, oh, okay, phew, you look good again. So anyway, that's it. If anyone cares, like if you're fashion inclined, there's actually some pretty cool looking outfits in this game that you can customize and put on. So I'm really glad they had that option, because it's nice to make you look cool. Plus, you feel cool when you're like decked out in like a fashionable outfit with a giant shotgun. You're like, yeah. Because that's like that's half of what Cyberpunk's all about, right? Everybody's dressed to the nines and cool fucking shit. So like, why do you got to look like a psychopath?
Yeah, that's fair. I definitely remember moments where I like would wave better outfits because my current one looked better.
Right.
So
yeah. And that'll happen. Yeah. That's why it's nice with this update. You can just you can just wear all the best equipment, but always look sharp. Anyway, yeah, that's Cyberpunk. I'll have it beaten next. I'm literally in the last mission right now. And I chose. I wanted to. I don't know. I did everything right to be allowed to go towards what is considered the secret ending, but for some reason it didn't want to happen for me. So that's fine.
I don't think you can get that first time round.
Really?
Is why
it says you can, but maybe not. Okay, maybe you can.
Maybe you could.
But maybe
I don't
now
know.
You can't. Okay, yeah, that's fair. It's okay. The ending that I'm going for right now is very satisfying, and I'm having a really good time. So it feels very like it feels good. Not like no spoilers, but like nomad ending, we'll call it. Is the one that I'm doing right now. Which Rick, what did you do actually? Like edit. So here I'll list like did you go like Johnny, Nomad, or Arasaka?
So I initially, when I was playing through the options, I don't want to say this out loud. So the I'm doing a symbol. I did that ending first accidentally.
Oh, you did the fourth one. Okay.
Just didn't even realize I was doing it, and there's no way of pulling backwards. I was like, oh, so this is what's happening now. And then
that's a depressing ending, but yeah.
And then I looped it back around, and the Nomad ending is the one with Panam, isn't it?
Yes.
That's the ending I did.
I love that ending so far. It's
I also chose to romance Panam, so like it all tied in.
Nice. Yeah, you can't
So-
romance Panam if you're female V.
Female V. No, I know, but I played as male V.
I
so
probably would have
it-
if I did, but us being besties riding into the the final storm is pretty great. I'm digging it.
Yes, yeah, and that final mission, I have to say, it felt very set piecey to me, but I understood that that's the way it kind of had to be. But the overall story and the way it went, for the most part, I was really, really satisfied with that ending. I didn't even bother looking at any of the others.
Nice.
So it's like, cool, that's me. Whenever the expansion stuff comes out, I will play through again, do the other endings. Lol, jokes on me, the expansions that come into PS4.
Yeah, sorry. But they do have what are they? What was I gonna say? They have cross save and stuff. So
Fuck that. My brother's got it on PC, so I will family share his copy when I've got a better setup and when the expansion is out, and I'll do it that way.
oh, that's what I'm saying though. You can cross save. You can bring your save over to your brother's thing because you can just use your
Yeah. There's a part of me that's quite interested to play from scratch and see how different an
okay.
experience it is with all the app updates and everything else. So I think if and when I come back to it, I will come back to it from scratch. I might
Yeah.
even play as female V that time. I don't know. See
Yeah.
how exciting I'm feeling.
Yeah, I think if I were to replay this at some point in the future, I would definitely play it as male V next time because it is different enough. And that voice actor is different. Plus, I would have a hard time, I think, playing this again as female V because then I would just feel like I'd have to do everything the same way, you know? That's how I get when I play
I'm fine
these
enough for remove that I would be absolutely fine without that. Anyway.
Yeah. But anyway, it's a great game. I recommend people jump into it now. It's still kind of buggy, but let's put it this way. On a scale of 1 to Bethesda, it's in the middle.
Is that a criticism or a praise? I'm really not sure.
It's both.
Touche, yeah.
No, well, because let's be real. Bethesda games are super fun and even more broken than this game. So I think that's it for this part. Why don't we jump into our topic for this week, which is basically just like the collector mindset, because we talked about this a little bit last week. The idea of having a collector mindset versus a enthusiast mindset when it comes to gaming. And I don't know, I thought it could be kind of fun to just talk about a little bit here, like where we think we sort of fall on these scales a little. And maybe we can start by trying to have an operational definition of the collector mindset. Because the way I sort of look at it is like, I don't know. I see individuals who enjoy the chase, right? Enjoy the thrill of getting a complete set of something, right? Like I hear people talk about, they're like, yeah, I want to have like a complete North America set of NES games or whatever, right? Full well knowing that, one, you will never play all those games. Two, you would never want to play all those games.
Nope.
And three, that this will serve zero purpose besides being up on your wall, right? Because I think collecting in general doesn't have a purpose, right? Like it can't really, besides the collecting of it and the displaying of it. Like, let's be honest, they don't serve a function, because when it does serve a function, I feel like you're doing that for a different reason. Like, I would argue I have many games. I have too many games. I have more games than I can ever play. But every time I buy
more
a game,
games than I could ever own.
yeah, which that's a twister. But at the same time, every time I buy a game, I always buy a game thinking I want to play this. Right? I don't think I've ever purchased something thinking I just want to own this. I'm not sure I've ever actually had that impulse. When it comes to games, there could be other things. But when it comes to games, I always had that feeling of like, well, no, but I want to play these games. I'm not interested in just having a complete set of something. So I don't know. What do you think? Is that hitting the money a little bit? Oh, you're muted, Rick.
Yeah,
I think that's the most extreme end. I think there's a step below that, which I think is maybe more emblematic of the mindset, which is wanting to have it even if you know you're not going to play it anytime soon. And I think
Yeah.
that's the edge case where a lot of us fall in, and I think where a lot of gamers fall in, where it's like, oh, I would like to play that eventually.
Yeah, but that's still just playing with the intent to play, buying with the intent to play, right? Like you're still not like you're
Is it
just
though? You're like
reserving it.
you're hoarding it for eventually, rather than like.
But I do think a part of collecting is the displaying, right? And the kind of the displaying of it, right? Like I feel like the hoarding is a whole other thing. Actually, we could talk about that too. We can add that to some mindset because I think that is a big thing.
But
Yeah.
hoard in the loose sense, not in the I have a pathway through the junk in my living room.
No. Yeah, but I mean like
collecting is like just like a more elegant way of saying carding.
yeah.
Mm.
Collecting is the coping mechanism of a hoarder.
It's not a problem; it's a collection.
Yeah, it's a collection. This isn't a.
Yep.
It's an interest. God damn it. But like, yeah. Anyway, Paula, what do you think? What do you think when it comes to collect? Because I think of all of us, you might have a more of a collector kick. But I don't know. We're both. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, in my case, I really like to, for certain very niche otome genres of games,
Mm.
I really like to go for the physical copy, especially if there's like a collector's edition on it. Just because I like to support the developers, and it's like, hey, I really want more Otome games. And like everyone in the Otome game community is like, okay, everyone, we have to buy this game just for this, because otherwise we are not gonna have more Otome games. And that was it for a while. Now I don't have to buy every single game and release, because holy crap, the Otome community has grown so much, and we get so many releases each year that there's no possible way that I can buy all Otome games that are coming out and get the other games that I'm interested in. So I have to dial back a little bit on the collecting aspect of my collection. The collecting aspect of my collection. The collecting aspect of my habits, because there's just not enough money, and with the price of the dollar, well, Paula is not gonna get all those games.
In this economy, yeah.
In this economy, we are not gonna get all the games. But one of the things
Sounds like
that I
I'm
try.
laughing, but I'm actually crying.
It's a bit of both. It's a bit of both.
Yeah, it's a bit of both. In my case, I really like to buy just the games that I feel like I'm gonna play, unless it is Steam sales, because that is another whole kind of worms.
But that's the thing. Do Steam sales not bleed into like a collector mindset where it's like, I have to have it because it's cheap? Yes, I would like to play it, but I have to have it now because it's cheap.
I also think but is that collecting, or is that, because for me what that is like the idea of like, oh fuck, I might want to play this later and I don't want to have to pay full price then. Like I I don't want to miss this deal, you know?
I think
That
there's
is
shades of
FOMO at
both.
its
I think
finest.
there's shades of both. And I think this is where this stuff gets murky. And I think this is where we probably tell ourselves one thing to try and make ourselves feel better, but there's very much a case
I don't
for
know
the other.
though. I just don't think like personally, because whenever I think of someone who collects something, there is always an element of display, right? Like there always is. Like if you collect statues, you display your statues. If you collect stamps, you put them in your little stamp thing. If you collect coins, you put them in this thing. If you collect books, you put them on your bookshelf. If you collect games, you have them displayed. When it becomes a digital ephemera, that to me is when it enters into a weird point. No one looks at my Steam collection. You know what I mean? Like I'm not displaying.
There is a degree of display. Like people can go and see your library depending on how you've got your privacy settings.
Yeah, usually I keep it private.
There's definitely a different emphasis, but it's there. It's not that disappears; it just changes.
But I think,
I agree. It's emphasized, nevertheless.
Yeah, you could make it something that you emphasize, but I think the fact that it's so passive and that you could ignore it, and like I completely ignore it, I just don't like. Because to me, I don't know. Personally, I've never felt like, and like I'll admit, like there's some things that I like to collect, but I just never felt that way about games, especially of the digital variety. Like it's just something I've never felt like, oh, I'm buying this because I want to. So that my collection's complete, right? It's more just like I would like to add this as something that I can play at some point, right?
And that's definitely an interesting difference where you're pretty all in on the digital future of gaming.
Yeah.
Whereas Paula and I are much more physical orientated. And that's not to say we don't get digital games, obviously, but if we can get a physical, generally we will get a physical.
But see, you know what
Yeah,
it is?
and in my case,
Go ahead,
and
Paula.
in my case, I do go into the collector thing a lot, not only because I like the limited editions of games that
Collector's
have
editions,
like
they're often called.
collector's editions, like, hey, the person like you, I have the deck of cards right here.
Mhm.
And I actually use this deck of cards, so it's not like I have it on display only. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's a collector edition, but I kind of actually go out of my way to use the things that come in the collector edition.
Mm.
But I am completely guilty of saying, hey, there's no physical version of all the Ace Attorney games in this side of the world. I went out of my way to order from Japan the ones that aren't physical on this side of the world.
Oh,
So yeah,
no.
I do feel a lot more in the collector mindset when I have the opportunity and when I do have the money for it.
And see, that's the thing that, like, you know, like for instance, I just recently bought a couple little statues, right? Like I'm getting those Ace Attorney ones and little Hollow Knight ones, which I find are fun. But I mostly want those, and like that I want to get for display. And so I had a little bit of that feeling. It was like, well, I could just get one, or I could just get all of them. Let's just get all of them, right? There, I felt a little bit of that collecting kind of drive. But when you talk about buying games, physical versus digital, I actually don't think it's not that I'm like full on in on the digital thing. It's just that I only want the cheapest one possible. That is my thing. My constant drive with games is as cheap as possible. So like I'll buy physically if it's really cheap. Like I got Dragon Ball Z physical because it was the absolute cheapest version, you know, checking out everywhere on all platforms, buying it used from this, you know, GameStop was like the cheapest way. And so like I feel like that's part of where some of like the collecting mindset can sort of shift a little bit, where it's like when you have the enthusiast, like you're here to play the game. For me, when I think about when I want to buy a game, the chief consideration is always price for me, right? Like what is the cheapest price for the most bang? Whereas I sometimes feel like when you enter into that kind of collector mindset, because I think I am like this when it comes to physical media, i.e. like books and things on games, I'm a little collectory about that stuff. Like, you know, I have all of the boss fight books collection, and I'm, you know, I do all the like multimedia, like there's like a little magazine that comes out and stuff, like, you know, Profound Waste of Time, those kind of things. I really like to have them and like get a little collection of them. So those I enjoy because I can look at them and like they're nice and stuff. And in those ones, I actually feel like price becomes less of an object for me. Like I don't mind paying a little more. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like price, yeah. I'm learning something about myself right now.
Yeah, price is always a factor. I think. I don't know what I think. Apparently, I'm drawing a blank here. Yeah, I don't.
There's
I
not a
suppose,
single thought behind those eyes.
no, it's just the Windows sound in my head because I'm trying to work out where I think I fall, because I think I do, and maybe this is why I'm so insistent that there must be a middle ground, because I think that's probably where I am. I'm definitely guilty of buying things to have in addition to buying things to play. And my predominant drive is almost always that I want to play a game that I've bought. I would never buy a game I don't want to play, but at the same time, I know I'm guilty of buying games that I don't know when I'm going to play them.
Yeah.
Certainly in the past, anyway, I know at
Yep.
the moment I'm much more, or trying to be much more mindful that if I'm getting something, it's either because it's a now or never situation, price or whatever wise, or because I want to play it almost immediately.
Yeah. I think I like to pretend that I'm conscious of
Yeah.
this, and that I always tell myself,
Yeah.
no, I'm not gonna get too much. And then I'm like, well, that Humble Bundle deal's $8. Like, I can use 10 new games. Oh, Fanatical has a new deal. Oh, those ones look pretty good, you know.
I did this a few weeks ago. We went to a shopping center and they had one of the surviving physical game outlets called Game in the UK. I went in for a browse, not intending to buy anything. I spent £60 on 3 Switch games.
It's always how it happens. Yeah.
But I did. They're not even Switch exclusive. Fucking Fist Forged in Shadow Torch. There's a Steelbook version of that on Switch. I didn't know that before I walked in. I know it now because I own it.
I actually like now that you're talking about this too, though. I think when it comes to video games, where I have a collector's mindset is on gaming hardware. I think that's where for sure I'm like more in the sense of I like to buy some things just to have them. I have 2 Vitas. There's no reason for me to have 2 Vitas, right? But I feel like there's a reason because one of them is jailbroken, one of them isn't. Yeah, and Rick's like got 4, right? And yeah, Paula's got 3. So that's where it comes in. It's in the hardware, right? I have a fucking DS Lite in there just because I love the way it feels. Will I ever really use it? Probably not, but it's there if I need it. It's got the GBA slot. That's important. And like, I got a 3DS. I have a Playdate. I have a Retroid Pocket.
It's
important. There you go. I have 2 Switches for Christ's sake, right? I have 3 Game Boy Colors or 2 Game Boy Colors, 2 Game Boy Advances. I have too many, and I sometimes catch myself. I almost bought a Game Boy Pocket the other day because I was like, I don't have that form factor, right? And it's like, I don't need it. Down, boy. You're like, you don't need that shit. And so, like, when it comes to hardware, that's where I feel like, because I think, and I think this is actually what it is for me at least. When it comes to collecting something, I often want to collect things that I feel as if there's no equivalent to, right? Like. With the Game Boy Advance, yes, you could emulate, but you're going to have to do that on your computer. And I already know that is a significantly different experience than getting to play on the hardware. So I recognize that it's like this set of hardware in this configuration only exists here, and I want that, right? I would like to have that. I want to own that. Books as well, for instance. It's like, okay, well, I would like to have the physical because otherwise it's an ebook, and Lord knows if I download another ebook, it's going to go into a folder called Books on my computer, and I will never look at it again. It's just how it goes, right? Because it vanishes. Yeah. It's not there in sight, so it goes away, right? Whereas games for me, I think they're the reasons why I don't feel so collecting about them, and I purge my games all the time, especially my physical games. I'll sell that shit in a heartbeat. I don't even give a fuck. I've sold lots of retro games, and I made bank off them, and I am happy with that, And like some people look at it and they'll get sad. And they're like, why'd I do that? And I was like, because I would rather get hundreds of dollars than have one moment when I'm older, feel really nostalgic and look at a game. Do you know what I mean? Some people don't want to make that trade-off, and that's totally fine. No judgment, no shade. It's just for me, I don't feel that compulsion. And I also recognize that games have so many other ways of playing them, right? Like just getting that easy flash card or getting the EverDrive. It's like, well, now I have every single game I want to play. Pop, and then you're good to go, So I don't know. I think that's what kind of tempers me from feeling super kind of. And I also think it's partly a conscious choice on my behalf because I know how easy it is to slip into the collector mindset and be like, oh, I just want to get this one. It's a little expensive, but it's not that bad, right? And then suddenly you wake up and it's like 5 days later and you've spent hundreds of dollars on a couple fucking games.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you're like, but it's pretty.
Yeah, in my case, I had to almost prohibit me from getting Japanese imports because you guys both know that the 5 games that I imported new on Switch are now either localized or waiting for a localization to happen next year at most.
Mm-hmm.
I still, like, in a way, since the things that I bought came with goodies, and also at the time I was like, hey, but I can do handle switches and try to see the translation and the original Japanese at the same time. And that is not gonna happen, but still I can get myself to get rid of those because but it is a collectible.
Yeah, that's.
It is in a different language that I didn't have.
So you're like, yeah, there's a lot of good ways to cope.
Yes.
You can always come up with
the
good
gift year
reasons.
one.
Yeah.
The gift year one especially was at the time it was very cheap, incredibly cheap, but because it had a cloth poster, it had a lot of little pins, which by the way I am very weak to. It had a booklet, it had 3 CDs with stuff on it, and it was like, hey, even if this gets localized, which at the time I was pretty sure it was gonna get localized, I just bit the bullet because of the collectibles. I am weak. Like, I do the same for pencils. And there was like I don't know how many years anniversary Sakura fine liner thing going on a while back, and I had a full Sakura set with fine liners and a brush pen. And I got the special edition because it just looked pretty and it felt very fancy, and I still use it, but it wasn't any different. The ink is the exact same that was in the other Sakura pencil, Sakura fine liners. So you can see that I have a problem here.
Yeah, I can't handle kitsch, like any of the little shit that they put in collector's editions. I fucking hate that stuff. I throw that shit out so fast, unless it's genuinely useful. Like you've talked about something that sound pretty cool, like the Persona card deck. Like that to me is like, oh, that's kind of neat actually. Like, you know, you can use cards for shit, you know.
And the art books are usually nice.
Yes, and you know me, I got a weakness for books at this point.
Books, exactly.
But when you put little pendants in there, fuck off.
Or sticker sets that no one's ever going to stick to anything.
Or postcards. What the fuck is the postcard thing? Like, no one sends
Having
postcards.
said that, the two bonuses that came with Fist Forged in Shadow Torch were stickers and lithograph postcards. So don't at me. But if you're listening to this podcast, you should tell us what you think. Are you a collector? Are you an enthusiast? Have we got this all wrong? Hit that like button and let us know. Do all of the things.
Yeah, tell us if you're a collector or an enthusiast or a bit of both, which we're probably all a bit of both, but tell us. Okay. Shall we move on to...
He's muted. How long's the game?
Thank you. I accidentally hit my mute button because I have an animal on my lap right now who's being very moving. So we should probably explain quick here. I think it's Rick's turn, right? Pull up the game.
It is my turn. So I am going to be picking a game for you two both to tell me how long it takes to beat. Yeah. Like the website.
Yeah.
So you'll be telling me main plus 100% times, 1 point for each of those. And then there'll be a 2-point bonus question, which is dealer's choice. The game this week, I've already queued up. It is the original Killzone.
Oh, the original Killzone. Okay.
Okay. On PS2.
On the PS2?
Governor.
Before I Google it, what is the extra?
So, you are going to need to be careful about this. So, in North America and Europe, the game was published by Sony Computer Entertainment. For 2 bonus points, can any of you tell me who published Killzone in Japan?
Oh, in Japan.
In Japan.
And so you're saying it's not Sony?
Maybe.
But this is a Sony first property.
How evil do you think I am? Don't answer that.
I think I know, but yeah. Are you asking us for like the specific Sony branch that?
Maybe not.
Yeah. All right. Well. Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna, unless this is some kind of devilish trick question, I'm gonna give you my my bonus first.
Ooh.
I'm pretty fucking sure this is who published it, but let's see.
I'm giving nothing away because you've got answers to put in, and Paula's got an answer to put in as well.
Yeah, let me try. Where is Rick on my inbox? Rick, where are you? I can't find you.
All right, I'm not feeling super confident on this one, but I have submitted my times. We shall see.
Yeah, Alex is all in. Paula's just waiting on you.
Like,
you found my message. I can see you typing.
I don't remember this one, but
yeah, just quick question. Does Killzone have like a multiplayer thingy?
Killzone.
I know some of them do, but that first one, I don't know.
Yeah, so the original Killzone had multiplayer and online play for up to 16 people.
Oh, yeah, wasn't that one of its big things?
It was one of its big things.
But usually multiplayer doesn't count in times.
Well, we're asking for main plus and completionist. They're generally angled at the single player components.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait,
from this period.
Was this before trophies, right? Yeah.
Yes, trophies weren't until the PS3. This was a PS2 title.
Because I played one Killzone game.
Okay, then it's not gonna.
And I think
I have that. I've heard it's quite good.
It's fun, yeah.
The Vita one's excellent. The Vita one's short but incredible.
That's what
it's also the PSP isometric one. Killzone Liberation. Yeah, excellent. Really quite good.
I mean, the Killzone games are always like, they're usually like the demonstration of the power of, Sony's new machine, basically.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah. Rightio. So we have times in for everyone. Let's go. So, main time. Paula says 10 hours. Alex says 7 hours. Paula's bang on the money. That's a 10-hour main time.
Oh, I'm fucked.
Main plus. Paula says 15 hours. Alex says 10 hours. 14 and a half hours is the time.
Ooh.
That's 0.2 for Paula.
Nice.
Completionist. Alex says 15 hours. Paula says 25 hours. And it's a tight one. The completionist time is half an hour and 19 hours. So by the skin of his teeth, Alex scrapes a point there.
Hey, I'll take one.
Which makes it 2-1 going into the bonus question. Now, I asked you, who published this game in Japan? Because in North America and Europe, it was published by Sony Computer Entertainment. Alex has put that it was also published by Sony Computer Entertainment, or SCE, because he thinks I'm horrible. He's right about that, but he's not right about the answer. It wasn't published by Sony Computer Entertainment in Japan, not at least according to How Long to Beat. Paula said that in Japan, the game was published by Sega. And she's bang on the money. It's Sega that published the game in Japan.
How did you know that?
I know. I don't know.
Also,
I think it's just a really good guess, to be fair.
Sega published Killzone?
Yeah. Well, so says How Long to Beat.
Really? I want to look that up. Huh. Sega Retro. Wow. That's weird. So it was produced by Sony.
Yeah.
How did you know that,
Sony
Paula?
First party title.
It was technically, I guess, because it was like, okay. Let's try to think a lot. And I don't know, like, what was the situation between Sony and Sega, like, at that time. But right now, I know that Sega publishes a lot of stuff. And Sega Atlas publishes, like, a lot of stuff for a time, just for Sony, Persona games especially. And, like, for some reason, it was, like, the first publisher that came to me when it was, like, oh, Japan. For some reason, that was, like, Sega. And because I really was like, maybe Bandai Namco, but that doesn't sound right. That was the other one that came to mind.
Yeah, I would have never in a million years guessed Sega. Honestly, never, ever. I just know this as a PlayStation first party game. That's interesting. I guess it was because it was designed for Europe and North America, and it was only ported to Japan by Sega. Wasn't initially released there, apparently.
Yeah, I think it was a slightly later release.
Yeah.
I've closed the tab now, so I can't see. But yes, I think it was.
It was ported a year later in 2005, which is very unusual for games of that era. Well, good job, Paula. You're up now. It's 6 for Paula, 3 for Rick, 1 for me. That's all right.
And Paula's hosting the last game of this game week of this round of the new format of the How Long to Beat game. So
Jesus, that was a lot.
There is it is. There is scope for Alex to catch up to Paula, or for me to surpass Paula before the conclusion of this game week. So it's all on the table and it's all still to play for.
That was a cool bonus
so
one.
Make sure you tune in next week. Sorry?
And still,
That's
I can
nice.
just fuck up in the next round. So
You never know. I was gonna say that was a cool
You never
bonus
know.
one. I really had no idea that Sega fucking published and ported this. That seems like such a. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, because I always tag Killzone with Sony, right? And it's like, yeah, they're all those game companies, they're so interconnected, right? Like they just, especially in Japan, they work together all the time on so much shit. Like I feel like each of these companies are like, like whenever people talk about how they're like, oh, like Square or like Sega has a really good relationship with like Sony or something. It's like, yeah, but Sega has shit that they work exclusively with Nintendo on, like Bayonetta, and then they're fucking throwing Yakuza at Microsoft all day long, and then like what I mean? Like they're all over the place with everybody. They just go wherever.
I mean, to be fair, Sega doesn't work with Nintendo Bayonetta. That's Platinum's IP. Sega just wouldn't fund it.
But again, they did work with Nintendo to get that going. So
sure. Just
But that's what I mean, though, right? Like there's just shit all over the place for them. They're like wherever the money is.
It's all very incestuous, yeah.
Yeah, which makes sense in a small kind of working industry.
On a small set of island, yes.
Yeah, right. Like you would imagine you would have to have good working relationship with a lot of companies. Anyway, that's it for this week. Tune in next week for more How Long to Beat podcast. Toodles.
Yes. See you the next time you hear our voice. Well, we won't see you because it's an audio recording, but yeah.
Always hear us.
hear us next time you hear our parts. I don't know. Bye.
Stop. Yeah.
We're professionals.
Oh.